Welcome back to my photography journey. Today I want to talk about the difference between my Nikon Z5, which I've had for a couple of years now, and the Nikon Z6iii. And this is a camera that I have rented for the last few weeks over Christmas and the New Year. I've been out to various places with it. I've taken, I think, nearly 2,000 pictures with it. And what I want to do is give a bit of a breakdown of the differences between the Z5 and the Z6iii. So the Z5, like I said, I've used for a couple of years now, so I'm quite familiar with that. And then the Z6iii, as you will have noticed, there's a couple of videos of different functions of this that I've discovered over the last couple of weeks. Things like pixel shift shooting and other things that I found in the menu, which I think are quite interesting and quite useful. But this is more of a general overview of the two cameras, differences between them, and things like that. So what I want to start with is the body of them. So the Z5 and the Z6iii are fairly similar. The Z6iii is a little bit wider, it's a bit thicker, and the layout of some of the buttons is a little bit different as well. I'm not going to go into every single little detail, but what's quite nice is that there is enough familiarity with the Z6iii that I feel right at home with it. I think the biggest change for me is the fact that on the top you have got a dial over on this side with a button that you press in the middle to turn it. And then over on this side, just here, is a little screen. And that screen will give you a bit of information about your settings, basically, and how you've got the camera set up. It will give you a bit of information about photos that you've taken, photos remaining, battery remaining, and your settings. So it's quite useful. I found it more useful than I thought I would, to be honest. For the function buttons, they are exactly the same on both cameras. You've got a function 1 and a function 2 on the front, and then the layout on the back, if I can hold these up as well, is nice and straightforward. So the biggest difference between them is the moving of the playback menu and the burst photo menu. They've swapped around on the cameras. I think it's probably slightly better the way that it is on the Z6iii, which I'm just going to call the Z6 from now on because it's quite a mouthful. But it's in the bottom right hand corner now, so you don't have to kind of move your hand away too much. You can just easily press on it with your thumb going from shooting. One of the other big things that you've got is the flip out screen on the Z6, which tilts and moves in and out, so you can have different angles on there or fold it back in the other way. And that's quite useful for taking different pictures. If you're up high, down low. What would be quite nice is if it was more like the Z8 and kind of could flip out where it is at the moment on the back of the camera, as well as going out to the side. Just a minor thing, but it would be quite useful. This is very similar to the Z30, so again, I'm quite used to it, and it works perfectly well. The EVF on the Z6 is meant to be the brightest one that's ever been made, and it is bright. You can change the brightness on it as well. It was really good. I liked using it. I can't say it was kind of night and day with the Z5. It was definitely better, but I certainly wouldn't have that as a reason to buy one over the other. One thing that I do really like about it is that when you change it to a portrait orientation, everything on the screen switches around as well, whereas the Z5, it will stay in the landscape orientation. Nothing will change with the layout on the screen. But when you turn the Z6, then you get everything shifting around, so it's easier to see when you're taking a portrait orientation picture. You also have more display options on that screen. Whether it's landscape or portrait, you're able to have a bit more control over what's on there. The digital horizon is a little bit better, and it's just slightly easier to use. I think you've got a little bit more control over it. You have to dive into the menus to change these things, but you've got more options when you do. one of the big things that's always made about new cameras is the speed and the accuracy of the autofocus. I've taken lots of pictures of the dogs running around in the woods, birds and things like that, and it works fine. You've got more options, again, in terms of either subjects that you track. So you've got animals, you've got vehicles, you've got planes, you've got people. Tracking planes is something that hopefully you can focus on yourself, but the option is there. And it all seems to work well. It worked for what I wanted to do. It was accurate, it was quick. There's a bit more customization as well in terms of the size of the window that you're using for your autofocus. With the dynamic area AF, you've got small, medium and large, and same with the wide area AF. You've got kind of more control over how wide that area is. The other big thing is usually the number of frames per second that you can take pictures at. And the Z5, as I've said before, the max speed is about 5 frames per second, which is significantly quicker than the camera that I had before. But in comparison to some of the other cameras around, it's a tiny amount. And I do get frustrated with that at times, particularly with the dogs and the cats. I want to be able to take quicker bursts in order to get them jumping or moving or that kind of thing. The Z6iii can go up to 14 frames per second or 20 frames a second when you're just using the electronic shutter. But it also has the C30, C60 and C120 modes where you're taking a JPEG, but you can go up to 120 frames a second, and you've got pre-capture with that as well. So the option is there. I don't think it's quite as useful as on the Z8, because on the Z8, you've got a higher megapixel sensor, so you're saving more data. So even though it's a JPEG, you've got a bigger file, a better quality. I'm not sure I'm going to be using either of them for that, but the 14 or 20 frames a second with the electronic and mechanical shutters on this is plenty for me. One of the other things that you can do on here is you can upload your own preset, basically. So you've got your picture controls, you've got the normal kind of landscape, vivid, portrait, flat, and some other kind of custom ones. But you can also create your own one in the Nikon Studio software, create it, upload it into your camera, and then use that. So it will apply to any JPEGs that you take, and they can have a particular color or balance or whatever you want to do with it, which again, might be quite useful if you want to take some JPEGs, you want to have your own particular look on them. But again, I'd always be taking raw files, which these don't apply to. I would do all that afterwards in something like Lightroom. And then one of the biggest differences is the video side of things. Now, I don't film a lot of video on my Z5. I generally use my Z30, which I am using at the moment. The quality is a little bit better with that, even though it's a cropped sensor compared to the full frame in the Z5 and the Z6iii. But the Z6iii has even more features. You can shoot RAW, you can shoot in N-Log, you can shoot ProRes and in 12-bit. So you've got a lot more data in your video files. Obviously, that is going to use up a lot more of your storage on your camera. But then also the Z6iii uses a CF Express card rather than just an SD card. So they can be bigger, they can be faster, and it's quite good for the video side of things. So you can actually shoot at 6K in RAW or 5.4K, I think it is, when you're shooting a non-RAW format. And that gives you a lot of information. You can shoot 4K 120 frames a second. So I'm filming this in 4K at the moment at 24 frames a second. So the amount of data that you can collect on the Z6iii is significantly higher than it is on the Z30 or the Z5. Both of those, the Z5 is best at HD, so 1920 by 1080, and the Z30 is quite good on 4K, which is what you're watching me on at the moment. So those are kind of the biggest differences, but a lot of things are still the same. So the menu structure is the same. Like I said, the ergonomics of the actual body are the same. So you don't have to learn these new things, that you still attach and detach lenses in the same way. So switching between the cameras in the Nikon ecosystem. So I've used the Z5, the Z30, the Z8, the Z6iii, and they all felt familiar to me. They all felt as if I could easily switch between one and the other. Yes, the Z8 has the most menu options and the Z5 has the least, but there's a similarity between them. They have a lot of the same settings and you can set them up in the same way. They've all got user modes that you can use. So there's no real difference in that side of things, which is really nice when you've got some lenses that you want to use on different cameras and you don't want to kind of learn a new menu every time you pick up a different camera. So do I like the Z6iii? Yes, it does everything that the Z5 does, but everything is just slightly better. You kind of have these little incremental gains with pretty much everything on there, and that's a really big thing. So I think I might actually upgrade my Z5 to a Z6iii, depending on if I can find a good deal for it, if I can trade in my Z5, maybe sell it on MPB or eBay or something to put some money towards the Z6iii. And then that way I will have all of those little gains that it gives me. So that's a bit of a summary of a comparison between the Z6iii and the Z5. I'm very much in the camp of it is a worthwhile upgrade, so I'm going to save up my pennies and look to find that in a sale, and like I said, try and trade in my Z5 at the same time and give myself a new toy to play with. And that's it from me this week. If you've got any comments, leave them down below, but other than that, I will see you again next week on my photography journey. Have a great week. Bye.